Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Taylors of Tech. We are live on Twitch. And I appreciate you all for tuning in today because we have some numbers to complain about. Just numbers, no new designs, leaks, reveals, or anything. If you guys want to talk about design, you guys can dictate what the stream is about. The title is merely a guideline. It's not meant to be the subject throughout the entire broadcast. It's just meant to be something to kick it off. You know, it's like, okay, if you guys aren't going to bring something up, here's something I'm looking at. So this makes sense to do as a Twitch stream because it's probably not super interesting in a video form. But we've got some early iPad Pro and M1 iMac Geekbench tests. So what this likely means is that either someone internally at Apple is playing around with the third-party Geekbench app on their prototype hardware that's early or whatever, or what's far more likely is that the press units are starting to go out. So we don't know exactly where in the world these are coming from, but they are showing up on Geekbench's database, which essentially means there's a very good chance YouTubers that are on Apple's nice list, whether it be Marquez, whether it be Rene Ritchie, iJustine, whoever gets to review the M1 iPads or M1 iMacs early has probably got their hands on these things, and they're now testing them and checking them out. But they're still under NDA, so they can't really talk about it, tweet about it, but it still shows up under Geekbench regardless. So I wanted to look at a few of them with you today. So I'm going to use mainstream modern technology to show you my desktop. Whoa, isn't this amazing? Okay, so sorry, audio listeners. You'll have to just listen to me and trust me. But the Geekbench tests are alluding to Apple being somewhat accurate with their claims that the new iPad Pro is about 50% faster than the previous generation that was rocking the A12Z chip. This one actually shows over 50% faster within the early benchmark. Safe to say this could be prototype early testing that's not as accurate, but most of the time this ends up happening, it ends up being pretty spot on. So down here, I'll blow it up a bit so it's a tad easier to look at. We have the M1 MacBook Air. We're looking at average multi-core results. This is for Geekbench 5. Keep in mind, Geekbench 5 is very different from Geekbench 4. But M1 MacBook Air, that's the one I reviewed, was 7,378. M1 iPad Pro, 7,284. So pretty dang close to each other. You're never going to get the exact same score every time you test it. It always varies a little bit test by test, but the fact that this is within 100 of each other means that the M1 iPad Pro, if anything, is just a slight bit slower than the MacBook Air, but when it comes to multi-core results, these could vary a lot, even by the 100. So I would say it's pretty dang close. And then the A12Z iPad Pro was 4,656. So we're talking a multi-core score jump from 4,600 to 7,200 within a single generation, which is pretty impressive. And to give you guys some perspective, the Intel Core i9 16-inch MacBook Pro was topping out at about 6,800 in the multi-core. So this is a pretty dang fast iPad. We're talking about a performance in a 5.9 millimeter device that's outclassing a 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is pretty amazing. But this probably isn't too shocking to people. You know, the MacBook Air didn't have fans, so seeing an iPad that also didn't have fans get around the same type of result makes a bit more sense to me. But it does get me excited, the fact that they're putting a chip that is as powerful as the MacBook Air, which I reviewed, and it was comparable to my iMac Pro. It was just a tad bit slower. I think my multi-core on my iMac Pro is like something insanely high. I think it's like in the 10,000s or 20,000s or something. It's very close to the 5300M in terms of GPU performance as well. Well, that's good because the iPad actually has a 120 hertz display. So if it wanted to play games at 120 FPS, is pretty incredible. The iPad Pro is more powerful than the base 16-inch MacBook Pro. Correct. I think more than that. Let's see. The M1 just looks like I want to put it on my wall for decoration. Me, that's waiting a long, long, long time for the MacBook Pro 14-inch. I know. We all want it as soon as possible. It has more GPU RAM than the 5300M at either 8 or 16 gigs. Well, that's good to know. I think Apple is trying to divide the Pro lineup and consumer lineup more clearly with the next devices coming. Yeah, I think so too. I hope it's not just through design things, because personally I don't feel like just because it's a consumer grade product that needs to look white and cheap. And my wife described it today. We were talking about the new iMacs and she was looking at it and she was like, I don't care if it's cheap or if it's entry level. She was just saying, like, I just don't want anything that's $1,000 to look like a toy. Anything that's over $1,000 shouldn't look like a toy, which is how she would describe those renders that are floating around of the white bezel, white keyboard MacBook Air. Yeah, why have we all just decided that if you're the consumer grade Mac user, you get an ugly Mac? That's not a justification for me. Well, it's supposed to be, not pro. It's meant to be average, everyday consumer. Like, everyday consumer doesn't have to be ugly. You don't have to get the junky toy-looking one. It reminded her of the iPod. That's what she was comparing it to. It was like, if it's an iPod Nano that's like $200 and you want that to be white, click wheel, and you want it to be colorful, okay, it's like a toy. It's for kids. But if we're talking about a computer that's like $900, $1,000, yeah, that's too much. Embargo of the iMac lifts on the 18th and the iPad lifts on the 19th. Oh, interesting. Well, I hope he's right on that. People are, for those audio listeners, Matthew is saying that Prosser is saying review embargo for the iMac lifts on the 18th, which would mean that, yeah, people are getting a hand on their early review units and doing these Geekbench tests, which means that these are pretty likely to believable. They sound about right to me. People will pay more for the Pro one simply because it looks better, which means more money for Apple. I guess I just don't like that business practice. I don't like the business practice that we just intentionally make lower end hardware ugly and then upsell people. And it's not even like with design differences. Like, some people might compare that with iPhone XR is slightly uglier than the iPhone 10 because it has thicker bezels, but that's because it had an LCD display, which needed a slightly thicker chin, and that's why the whole bezel all the way around. And to use an LCD was cheaper than to use an OLED. This is just a color palette choice. This is just like, make all the bezels white so that people will want to spend more money on the black one. Yeah, I don't like that mentality, but oh my god, we cannot do a single Twitch stream without talking about white bezels. This is getting annoying. But speaking of the bezels on the M1 iMac, let's take a look at this bad boy. We got some Geekbench tests here. M1 iMac is up to 56% faster. I'll blow this up a tad. You guys can read it. 56% faster than the prior generation high-end 21.5-inch iMac. I know that this makes for a great headline, but I personally found this a little bit deceptive, a little bit misleading, just a tad. I mean, yes, the M1 is definitely faster than the chips it's replacing. However, the 21.5-inch iMac that this is filling in the gap for, the 4K one, I hate all these ads here. Can I go to Reader View? Hey, look at that. That looks much cleaner. Thank you, Reader View. The 21.5-inch iMac with the 4K display was substantially outdated. They had not updated it, I think, since 2019, and I think it was early 2019. Like, the last time the 21.5-inch iMac got not even a design, man, where the design was essentially the same for like 5-6 years, but the specs were unchanged since March of 2019, and now we're talking like end of May 2021. So if they would have continued on their trend with Intel, it would have definitely gotten faster. But yeah, it's faster nonetheless. Down here we have the Geekbench 5 results. iMac 21 one version. It says Apple One base frequency 3.2 gigahertz. So we're pretty confident that this is accurate. These benchmarks, they're saying, are likely for the entry-level option with the 7-core GPU and 2 Thunderbolt ports. So the actual one with 8-core GPU might be a tad faster. So it got 1729 single-core, 7459 multi-core. So a couple hundred above the M1 MacBook Air. Just a little bit. I wouldn't say substantial because, again, these vary a lot depending on the environment, and knowing that the 8-core GPU option is clocking in a multi-core around 7459 means we should expect it to be a tad bit faster. In fact, the fastest M1 clock speed is likely in the iMac because this is the only M1 that has 2 fans inside. I don't believe the M1 Mac Mini has 2 fans. It just has the one, but probably doesn't make a huge difference. But something interesting they noted here. So this is the older generation 4K iMac, early 2019. This is the one it's replacing. So obviously like a 600 jump in single core performance, which is huge, and then a 1400 jump in multi-core performance. So yeah, it's a pretty substantial increase from the last generation, to be fair. But they did mention here that compared to the high-end 27-inch iMac, the M1 outperforms single core but is lagging behind the 10th generation Comet Lake Intel chip in multi-core performance. So in case you guys didn't know, the high-end 27-inch iMac earned a single core of 1200, so M1 is killer in single core pretty much across the board. But the multi-core score on that 10th gen iMac is over 9,000. So this is not the fastest iMac in every way. And this is bumping up against my iMac Pro performance and Geekbench scores, which is why, for those curious, the main reason I have not decided to go ahead and opt for a M1 Mac Mini in replacement of my iMac Pro is because the M1, in some aspects, not all, is still technically a bit slower than my current iMac. So because of that, I want to wait until Apple Silicon can outperform my current Mac in every regard. And this is part of the reason I think it's worth mentioning. This is part of the reason we were kind of hoping the 24-inch iMac would get something a little bit more than the M1. I understand that the base iMac is for everyday people and it's for average consumers and it's meant to be playful and colorful and all that. That's great. I don't know. I have a hard time understanding the presence of that market. I don't think it's that large. I know that there are some people out there that it makes sense for them. I just don't think there's a huge number. I feel like seeing these Geekbench tests, it's proving to me that the performance advantages over getting an iMac versus getting something like a MacBook Air is very small. And you're shipping a laptop CPU into a desktop, which I guess is fine if you prefer the desktop. It just costs so much more, though. So that's why, at the end of the day, I haven't gotten my hands on the M1 iMac yet. I'll try it out and see if maybe when I look at it in person, I fall in love with it. I don't think that's going to happen, but ultimately, I still think that I would more likely recommend an M1 MacBook Air to everyday people. And because that's cheaper, you could easily like dock it with an external monitor, which I don't think is that complicated or difficult. I've run into people that don't want to deal with external monitors, but honestly, if you're asking for my personal recommendation, I'm not going to fall on the side of the iMac, especially looking at how it's not about the M1 being slow. It's about the M1 being so accessible to so many different Macs now. And if you're the type of person who doesn't need a laptop, you don't care about laptops, you're fine with a desktop, and you're fine with your Mac not going anywhere, then I'm going to say M1 Mac Mini. And if your budget is more than that, and you want to get an iMac for the keyboard and mouse and everything, and the monitor that's included, then yeah, you got a lot of different monitor options to choose from to dock with your Mac Mini. And if you're the type of person that doesn't want to set up a Mac Mini with a third-party monitor and you just want something that's plug and play and works right out of the box, then I'm going to say MacBook Air. Because that you can actually take with you to the bedroom or take on the couch in the living room or take it to the kitchen. Take it wherever you want to go. I'm just having a very, very difficult time understanding the precise market of the iMac. But seeing these performance tests have kind of reaffirmed to me that it's not going to be substantially faster or better than just getting a Mac Mini or a MacBook Air. Anyway, we have a tad bit of breaking news, which I thought would be interesting. Elon Musk just tweeted like 1 minute ago a picture with a big wall of text about Tesla and Bitcoin, and I think this will be interesting to read live because it's happening as I'm documenting this, and I don't really exactly know what it's about. So I wanted to read it for you anyway. Let's get off the iMac subject for a second, right? Like, can we take a break? Okay. Let me take a look at this. I want to read it. Okay. Tesla has suspended vehicle purchases using Bitcoin. Wow. Okay. They're backtracking a bit here. Wow. We are concerned about rapidly increasing use of fossil fuels for Bitcoin mining and transactions, especially coal, which has the worst emissions of any fuel. Cryptocurrency is a good idea on many levels, and we believe it has a promising future, but this cannot come at a great cost to the environment. Tesla will not be selling any Bitcoin, and we intend to use it for transactions as soon as mining transitions to more sustainable energy. We're also looking at other cryptocurrencies that use less than 1% of Bitcoin's energy/transaction. Wow. They're backpedaling on this one. Man, Tesla and Elon just move at the speed of light. They just change their minds on things so quickly. That was a concern I was seeing brought up a lot with Bitcoin. I was seeing a lot of people like Golly from Hyperchange suggest that Tesla should get into Bitcoin mining so that they could do it in a more cost-effective manner using their like Powerwalls and stuff. But that's interesting. Who takes their laptop into the kitchen regularly? Not that many. No, I'm not saying that's a common thing. I'm just saying that's one more thing you can do with the MacBook Air, which has the same performance as the 24-inch iMac and is cheaper. It's just one more example. I mean, there were several... Let me find them. There were several pictures people had of the 24-inch iMac that they were just kind of using it for day-to-day stuff. I'm looking for it here. Yeah, use it in the bedroom, use it at the desk, use it at the office space. You'd always show the back of it because that's the most flattering angle, right? This is the side of the iMac they're most proud of. I'm trying to find it. Was in the video. I don't see where the video option is for it, but there were several videos of them showing it. Was it in here? That kind of looks like a kitchen countertop. What's with this arm on the countertop? With the, like, shelves in the background and stuff. I don't know. That kind of looks like a kitchen to me. A kitchen background. They're just trying to basically treat it like a dedicated Google Home hub that's $1,500 or something crazy. But, yeah, I get that they're a great pair. Apple seems to love showing it with the iPhone. Isn't macOS fun? We love macOS. Also, you get Touch ID on the base model with MacBook Air. And if you're buying it for education, it's $900. It's like substantially cheaper. Designed with the earth in mind. Huh. Oh, webcam. What? Wrong one. Sorry. I take my laptop all the time to watch stuff while cooking. There you go. Vlad is an argument for it. Mine Bitcoin with the M1 chip. There you go. Time to buy Bitcoins. I wonder if the value is going to drop because of that Tesla suspending. It's down 5%. Everything's down today, except Nikola, of course. That's kind of funny. Look at this. All the stocks are going down, except there's one Nikola stock. Nikola has done literally nothing and has openly admitted to lying to people. But their stock's going up. Everything else is down, though. All these other, legit, real companies. Everything else is going down. That's the stock market for you. Dogecoin down 9% today. Jeez. Oh, well. Let's see. I wonder how the iPad will take advantage of the 16 gigs of RAM. That's a great question. I'm really, really hoping they talk about that at Quadruple UDC because Apple has never brought up RAM in iPads before, and this is the first time they've ever bragged about that and openly mentioned it in the tech specs. They're like, hey, by the way, iPads, when you buy the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte storage option, now come with 16 gigs of RAM. They've never bragged about that before. They've always kept that a secret, and now they're being open about it, and I'm wondering if... Because I will agree, if iPadOS just has a few nifty new features of just like, this new Apple Pencil screenshot thing. If the iPad's just like, now you can run the calculator in a window. Kind of like picture-in-picture, except it's a calculator. If that's all they do, I'm just going to... Yeah. I'm just going to be like, yeah, that was overkill. I agree. 8 gigs of RAM is overkill if that's all they do. Because I know what is possible with the M1 MacBook Air. I did live streams and I did my video editing on that with 8 gigs of RAM, and I ran into no RAM management issues. And I'm doing, 8K video editing in Final Cut, and I was doing 4K at 60 video editing regularly with an external monitor. So I think 8 gigs of RAM is plenty for even power-intensive users. I mean, 16 gigs of RAM is more for Chrome users than anything. It's not because you're doing that much on the Mac. It's because you insist on using Chrome. So they really need to do something with the software to make 8 and 16 gigs of RAM justifiable on the iPad. Otherwise, it's just complete overkill. The software updates are what I care most about. Obviously, I would love for there to be hardware at Quadruple UDC. I just have a feeling it's too early. We got so much hardware at the end of April, and now we're getting a bunch of hardware at the very end of May. And it's like, if they weren't going to be able to mass produce and deliver all these iPads and iMacs until the end of May, and they planned on having hardware at Quadruple UDC, why not just wait to announce that stuff? They could have very easily just not had a spring event, but they chose to have one, and it was pretty stuffed, in my opinion, with AirTags and new Apple TV and everything. It was the most eventful April event they had ever had. I'd never seen Apple do a March or April event with that much information. I have in my PC 32 gigs of RAM, but my PC only uses about 10. Yeah, and it's different. Like, PC maintains RAM different than unified memory. It's the RAM on the M1 chip is more similar to that of like iOS RAM, where it can intelligently share the RAM depending on what you're doing. So it's not like 8 gigs of RAM on the iPad is equal to 8 gigs of RAM on your Windows laptop. Like, they're not equal in terms of real life performance. It's kind of weird. I feel like this is the first year in a long time that we're going into Quadruple UDC knowing basically nothing other than we're getting new software. I don't know. I felt like we've had that a few years. Last year I was going into it expecting no hardware and pretty much just minor software upgrades, but iOS 14 ended up being somewhat of a big deal. I wasn't expecting home screen widgets and picture-in-picture to be a thing, but it was. It was kind of uneventful at the end of the day because widgets were kind of nerfed and picture-in-picture doesn't work on YouTube, which is kind of the biggest video application people use. Safari has problems. My degree work doesn't support Safari for exams and things. Very annoying. I know. I use Chrome for random stuff too, but I got 32 gigs of RAM myself, so I don't know how much I'm using. Probably not that much. I would recommend getting an iMac over a Mac Mini if you have a cramped desk setup like me. I don't know. The Mac Mini is not that space. It doesn't take up much space. And the new iMac is not that small, to be fair. I don't really fall into that category because you can very easily put a Mac Mini just at the very base of whatever external monitor you end up getting. And you still, whether you use the Mac Mini or you use the iMac, you still have to use a keyboard and mouse. So I don't understand the argument that the 24-inch iMac fits on my cramped desk, but a Mac Mini can't because I have to put a Mac Mini off to the side or something. Like, you can put a Mac Mini in a pretty compact area, pretty small. It's pretty versatile. You can even attach it to the back of the monitor. You know, people have little rail systems that can, like, latch on the back. And it's cheaper. And it has more I.O. with HDMI and 2 USB-As. Dock your Mac Mini to the back of your computer. Yeah, it's... With the Mac Mini being so much cheaper, I'm not going to say that desk space is what should stop you, you know? Like, it's like, well, this computer costs, $500 more, but I don't have to get a new desk. It's like, you could just get a new desk, dude. You can get a decent desk for like $400. That's how much my desk was, and it's enormous. It's way too big. I don't think that's a good reason to choose another computer over the other. My desk is too small. I agree. iOS widgets suck. I don't use them very much. They should have made them interactive. I don't know why they chose to not make them interactive. Wouter says he usually uses between 7 and 11 gigs of RAM on his Windows laptop, even if it's not a one-to-one comparison. Yeah, that makes sense. Just a MacBook Air instead of either an iMac or a Mac Mini. Yeah, I don't understand what this whole hate against external monitor business is. It's not that hard. It literally takes less than 3 seconds for... I know because this is what I used to do. Before I had my iMac Pro, I did everything off of my 15-inch MacBook Pro. And I used to dock that thing to 2 external monitors regularly. I remember having this old time lapse that I tweeted about, and I was showcasing how cool they were that you could dock multiple monitors in. Basically, I could take my 15-inch MacBook Pro anywhere, right? I could throw it in my bag. I could edit at a friend's house. I could edit on the couch. I could edit in the living room. I could go wherever I needed to with my MacBook. But then when I wanted a bigger setup, because the MacBook already has a keyboard, so, you know, you can just pair one mouse with it, call it good, and you set your MacBook down at the desk and you plug it in. It's like as simple as charging your phone at the end of the day, right? You just kind of dock it, you plug in the monitor, and now, boom, you have two screens to work with. Or if you want, you can just close the MacBook and have an external keyboard and you can argue that you have all this extra budget because it's so much cheaper than the iMac. You know, like with the education bundle, you can get a MacBook Air for $900, and that comes with Touch ID. And you have to drop like $1,400 on the iMac to get Touch ID. So, or $1,500 if you want the extra ports. So you have like a $600 budget to get another monitor, another keyboard, or a mouse. Some people don't like the Magic Mouse, you know. I like mine, but either way, I'm just saying it's not a demographic I can see recommending very regularly. It's a very specific one. Basically, if you're getting the iMac, you don't need my advice. It's because you know exactly what you want and you're not willing to budge on it. So, you know, don't check for my opinion just to reaffirm your purchasing decisions. It's interesting. I'm just seeing the news now. It's interesting that Elon is now backpedaling on suspending Bitcoin payments. It's like, why are you allowing it? Why did you allow it in the first place? If at the end of the day, you were going to suspend it for the amount of energy it uses. Like, I don't know. Your friend asks you to study at their house. Hold up, let me pack my iMac. Yeah, pretty much. But, okay, here's the point I'm trying to make. This ties back into our subject, right, about the Geekbench results. If the iMac was substantially faster than the M1 MacBook Air, that would be a totally different discussion, right? Like, if they decided to give the iMac the M1X and it had much better performance and much faster multi-core scores and single-core scores and everything, then I could understand. Like having a market that's, all right, this one isn't portable, so it's more expensive than a MacBook Air. Fine, I'll give you that. But it's way faster than a MacBook Air. And because it's faster than the MacBook Air, I can understand that market. It's like, okay, this is someone going for Apple Silicon, they're going for a desktop, and they want more performance than the MacBook Air can offer. And that's not what happened here because they have the same performance. So it doesn't really have that leg up on it. Okay, Avnub says, my room doesn't allow me to get a bigger desk. Having a Mac Mini and external monitor would take up quite a lot of space. Would it, though? The iMac would barely be small enough to be ergonomic. Again, just my perspective. Doesn't apply to everyone. The thing is, though, about the 24-inch iMac, it's not that big. I mean, it's not that small. The Mac Mini and external monitor, I don't think would take up much space on your desk because the iMac is not particularly compact. It's thin from the side, but not from the front. It's actually bigger than the 21.5-inch iMac and taller than the 21.5-inch iMac. So it's not like the bezels were shrunk substantially. They got a little bit thinner, but you can easily put the Mac Mini on the front or put it on its side, or I'm just saying, like, an external monitor with a Mac Mini does not take up much space. I don't think it's night and day different compared to the 24-inch iMac. In fact, the Mac Mini has a internal power supply. Yeah, if you can fit an iMac, you can fit a Mac Mini. That's how I feel about it. For one, that iMac's got a giant chin. If you get an external monitor, you don't have a giant chin to worry about. You can put the Mac Mini right at the base. I've done this before. That's why I'm telling you. I've used a 27-inch monitor with my Mac Mini back when I had one. You can be very space efficient with the Mac Mini. That's why it's mini, you know? It doesn't take up much space. So I don't think the iMac wins the portability argument considering how tall and bulky it is. Like, if you're just talking about other 24-inch monitors out there, there are much smaller, more thin bezeled 24-inch screens on the market. that will have that'll have a fairly elegant and compact stand that you can fit the Mac Mini below or along. Some people even put the monitor on top of the Mac Mini. I don't know if that's good for the structural integrity, but a lot of that Mac Mini's empty anyway. Long story short, the M1 that's in the other devices performs the same as the same chip in the new iMacs. Pretty close. Like, looking at the Geekbench results right now, like the Geekbench 5 score for the iMac is 7,400. And for the iPad, which is fanless, it's 7,200, but very close to 7,300. So they're only a couple hundred points away in the multi-core results. And one of them is fanless and mobile and 5.9 millimeters thin. And the other one is 11 millimeters thick and, much larger and has an external power supply. Especially if you're talking about like a compact desk, like you don't have that much room. I would imagine having an external power supply on your iMac being kind of annoying. That if you have a small desk in a small room and you have this giant power brick you have to make room for, compared to the Mac Mini, which keeps all that internal. Yeah, you got to have another cable for the external monitor, but the external monitor is going to have an internal power supply. It's not going to be a big chunky brick on the bottom. One man's opinion. Yeah, where's the M2? Can we get it? Let's see. The Mac Mini requires several more cables and outlets. I hate that. Not really, just one for the monitor. iMac is going to have a giant brick hanging out the back. Mac Mini will not, which you got to find a place for that brick, or it's just going to sit on the floor. I find that less elegant. I had first a 23.5-inch monitor. After 3 years, I switched to a 27-inch. That's another world. Oh, yeah. Once I got, like, my first iMac I ever used was 17 inches back when they made that. It had white bezels and a white chin, and I was not a particular fan of that design. But it was all I had at the time. My sister had it for a while, and then she got a MacBook Pro for college or something, and she gave me her old iMac. So I got the 17-inch iMac, and I was like, okay, this is fine. I'm comfortable with it. And then a few years later, I bought the 21.5-inch iMac, and I was like, whoa, this is so much cooler. I love the black bezels. I love the metal build. It's not white plastic anymore. And I thought it was so much better. And that was basically the biggest iMac I had used at the time. So I was pretty in love with it. But then a friend of mine got the 27-inch iMac, and I got to film him unboxing it. And I was just like, ooh, this is gorgeous. And I loved it. So once I started getting comfortable with the 27-inch build, I was like, oh, man, this is amazing. And then after that, I messed around with a few 32-inch monitors, and I basically realized that the bigger the screen, usually the happier I am. It's just finding that balancing act between when is it a TV and when is it a computer monitor. But honestly, I have docked my old Mac Mini to a TV a couple times, and it's pretty dope. Yeah, the 17-inch iMac was 4x3. It was pretty tiny. Sorry for the lag. I see it. Starlink. Come on, Starlink. You can do it. Yeah, the 17-inch iMac was 4x3. It was pretty tiny for a desktop, but that's, from the age it was coming from, that was a pretty normal size. Back then, the bigger size option was 24 inches, I think. It was like 17 and 24. I believe somebody will make a black bezel for the new iMacs, and you can buy it on Amazon. Well, D-Brand made one, but it's like $500 or something. I would have thought that Apple would at least increase the clock speed of the M1 on the iMac to give it a performance advantage. Missed opportunity, in my opinion. I agree. It does sound a little bit faster, to be fair, but not much faster than a Mac Mini or anything. Sounds like the M1 performance-wise is going to be pretty equal compared to all the different devices it's on. It's a cable to connect the external monitor to the Mac Mini, another one connected to the wall. And the cable to connect the Mac Mini to the... Well, the monitor comes with a cable, dude. I don't know that many monitors that don't come with a cable. That's why I said it's one extra cable. So many cables and so many parts from so many different companies that could fail. And it's just... Don't buy the cheap knockoff ones. Just get the ones with high ratings. White bezels are just like the notch. No. The notch serves a purpose. White bezels was a design choice that is divisive at best. Some people like it. A lot of people don't like it. Notch, there was no other place to put the Face ID sensor, so it had to be there. What's my go-to McDonald's order? I haven't been to McDonald's in over a year. I don't know. I think in my bachelor days, I used to get the deluxe quarter pounder. But they used to have just like a triple cheeseburger that was pretty cheap, and I remember liking. We can be happy not to buy the stand extra for $1,000. If it was between white bezels and a chin and having to spend $1,000 on the stand and having no chin and black bezels, I would have taken the stand. I'll be honest. Like, if the new iMac comes out, the iMac Pro with black bezels and no chin, but you have to buy a Pro stand, I'll do it. It'll be worth it to me. Especially if the pricing doesn't go much higher, because then it's like, okay, I got to drop my money on a $3,000 iMac and then a $1,000 stand, $4,000 out the door, but I get the design I wanted. All right. Sounds worth it to me. I mean, the Pro stand is still stupid, but I think the chin is dumber. I got to look at that thing all the time. The stand is just a stand, you know? It just holds the I mean, it's a decent stand, at least. You can rotate it, and it magnetically attaches and whatever. So, yeah. Could be worse. Let's see. It is a very aesthetic-based computer. That's true. Since they are all the same chip, I'm not surprised. I just don't understand, like, if the M1 can perform so equally depending on whether or not it has fans, then why are they putting fans in all these M1 machines? Like, if you're going to make a thin consumer-grade iMac that's not made for pros, it's not made for, you know, high-intensive workflows. This is just made to be the consumer computer that you use for Zoom and you use for FaceTime and you use for the basic, you know, I need to go on a website. You know, if that's what it's for, why even bother putting fans in it? You know, why not brag about how this is the quietest iMac ever and make it thinner with no thermal architecture, because we have proof that the M1 works in fanless designs and can still have insanely high specs. So just, I don't know. The market's ping pong back and forth. On one hand, you have people saying, well, it's not for professionals, it's for everyday folk, it's for basic tasks. On the other hand, it's like, well, we gave it 2 fans because we want it to perform slightly better than the MacBook Air, just tiny bit faster, not really that much. Who would look at the chin all day, though? Wouldn't you be looking at the screen? I have to look at the chin. I've been looking at a chin for over 10 years, dude. I've been using iMacs for 12, 13 years. And I'm looking at a chin right now. It's still there. It's like for the same reason people wanted an iPhone with no chin. Remember how proud people were the day when Apple adopted OLED and they went through all these hurdles to bend the OLED at the bottom so that the bezel would be equal all the way around? Everybody loved that. We wanted that. Then they did it with the iPad. They ditched the forehead, they ditched the chin, and they went in favor of one size bezel all the way around. And we got this glorious beauty. One size bezel. So clean, so simple. The fans is more for assurance than anything? What assurance? Assuring what? Big LCDs produce heat, which even though it's not a lot of heat, still could have an impact on the processor. Meanwhile, the LCD on the MacBook Air isn't going to affect the processor at all. Well, that's what I was going to say. I was like, doesn't Apple have a mini LED display with no fans in it? There are videos from iMac unboxings in 2009. Yeah, they've all had like, just look at, to me, it's quite simple, right? Like, go back 10 years and look at the Apple product category versus how it is today, right? Like, let's do it. Let's do it right now. I'm going to do it with you. Let's look up the 2011 iPhone. What's different? Okay, we got white bezels. Thank God those went away. But this is how... there's a website picture. iPhone 4S of 2011. We had big chin on the bottom, big forehead on the top, smaller display, black and white bezels back when it was optional, And they had the dual-core A5 chip from Apple. This is 10 years ago. Now let's flash forward to today. What does the iPhone look like now? Much more clean, much bigger display, no chin. 10 years of design improvements. We got the display taking the priority because it's a dynamic interface. iPhone of today, iPhone of 10 years ago. How about 2011 iPad? What did that look like? Pretty chunk, pretty big bezels. Kind of dated, way back when. Barely had a camera. Black and white bezels, they made it a choice. But we go to iPad of 2021, we've shrunken those bezels down quite a bit. And they're only black now. Mind-blowing performance. Look at that. So thin. Bezels getting out of the way. You can hardly tell where the display ends. That display is almost going right to the edge. It's like that bezel is basically almost there just so your thumbs have somewhere to rest. Right? We can't even go back 10 years with the Apple Watch. But let's compare. Series 3. Bigger, chunkier bezels. That's why they're always showing it blacked out. That's why the Apple Watch bezels have always been black, so it blends in with the OLED display better. And you can't really tell where the edge of the display is. But if you go with a full screen interface, you can tell. See, that's why when they do a full screen interface, they do it with the Series 6 or SE, because they're proud of how thin that bezel is, going right to the edge. Not so much with the Series 3. They blacken out the edges because we know how that looks. Not as pretty. Yeah, see, it's all squared off. Larger display. About the same weight. There you go. Here's a good example. 38 millimeter case, 40 millimeter. This is just within a few years of improvement. But now let's go back to the 2011 iMac. iMac of 10 years ago. Wow. We've got basically same old, same old. It still has a chin. It's got black bezels way back when. I was almost going to say this looks better. It does kind of look better. 10 years later, Apple basically turned the bezels white and got rid of the logo on the chin. But the chin is still there. So it's that type of lack of progress that frustrates me. And that's what kind of bugs me about it. Hey, thank you for the tier 1 sub, Matthew Tyler. Appreciate that. That was nice of you. There are videos from 2009. My mom had the original iPad. We had it too. I have one in storage here. Is my Series 4 water resistant? It is water resistant. It's not waterproof. They're hesitant to use that term. But basically, you can like do some swimming with it. I don't think you can go scuba diving with it. But I wore my Series 4 in the shower for like years and never had any issues. It's not about whether or not you mind it. It's about, is the change worth it, Matthew? If it's going to divide this many people. If you did white bezels on the iPad Pro, the Face ID sensors would look painfully obvious. You'd have all these black dots all over the thing. I think it looks gross. No, thank you. Don't give Apple any ideas. Yeah, don't worry. Let's see. Black bezel with no chin would be one of the most boring designs ever. I disagree, because that's essentially what this is, and it looks fantastic. I don't think the design is about being boring. It's about being practical. It's about, you know, the whole design philosophy with the 24-inch iMac is, can we get it down to 11 millimeters thin? It's not about maximizing screen real estate with the front of the device, which is what the iPad did. Same with your iPhone. It's about, like, let's push the display, let's push the pixels up to all the edges. iMac wasn't about that. iMac was, let's get it thin from the side, which doesn't impact anything. And this is just, when you imagine a desktop, when you imagine a futuristic device, this is what I think fits the definition better than a giant white bezel chinned all-in-one. I don't think it's about, like, we got to make it interesting because this is boring. Therefore, we need to do something different. Because this is boring, we need to add a big chin to the iPad, and we got to do something crazy with it because it's boring. That's like the foldable mentality. Because we can't think of anything new, we're just going to do something crazy. It doesn't have to be good. We're just going to do something different. Apple said the white bezels distracted the viewing experience, so they took them away. Yeah, I remember when there were all the rumors going around that Apple only had black bezels on the iPhone X for the best optimum viewing experience. Yeah, now they're like, never mind. That no one really talked about Apple making sort of a rubberized Apple Watch made for sports activities. Didn't sound believable to me. We talked about it on the podcast a little bit. I was like, wouldn't Apple just recommend you get a case? I don't see them making like a rugged outdoor Apple Watch, but I don't know. Maybe just for the sake of we don't know what else to do with the Apple Watch. It kind of has run out of new features, and all they can really do with the Apple Watch now is health sensors. Here's some other new health sensor. Here's some other new health sensor. So maybe if they're just bored, we're like, okay, let's try making a rugged, more durable one. I don't know. I would rather, for the same reason Apple never really made iPhone actives, or iPod actives like Samsung did, where like they intentionally made phones that were more water resistant and durable. Apple never really did that. They're just like, get a case, just get a case. That's probably what they would think about the Apple Watch. Tiny while ago, I heard about Apple possibly working on trying to get AAA companies to port games to Apple Silicon to try to fight the stereotype that Macs are incapable of gaming. If this is true, what is your opinion on it? I personally heavily doubt it will happen. Yeah, it sounds very hard to believe, personally. I've always retained the mentality that the hardware is not the problem with Macs not being gaming machines. It has everything to do with game devs not wanting to optimize for Mac because they don't see much point in it. It's not about how easy Apple makes it. I feel like that's the misconception. There's a lot of people out there that are like, but it's so easy now to port your iPhone and iPad games onto the Mac. Or it's so easy, like Apple Silicon is so high graphics and, you can get such great performance out of it. Now it can be a gaming rig. It's like, that's never been the problem. As long as I can remember, Macs have had decent hardware. It's all just been about game devs don't see a huge gaming market on the Mac user base, and they could make their game really easy to port over, but that's still a huge demographic that they have to patch bugs for, they have to maintain servers for, and all of that is going to require time and money and people that they have to pay just to be the Mac support channel for their game libraries, and they know that there's not a ton of gamers in the Mac community. So I'm sure there are some. I'm not saying there's none. I'm just saying compared to PC, it's like barely any. And because of that, game devs, no matter how easy Apple makes it, they're not going to see it as worth it. They're just going to be like, why would we bother? We're not going to make much money from that, so why would we spend much money on that? They could make an Apple Station for game console. That's basically what the Apple TV is, but it's not going very well. I think it would be perfect for someone like my dad. He's been hesitant to get an Apple Watch because he does a lot of work on house foundations because he has to use sledgehammers, and metal and glass is easily breakable. He also dives. Meanwhile, a rubberized one with a type of plastic screen that's completely waterproof would really appeal to someone like him. Yeah, I doubt that's a huge market, so I can understand why Apple wouldn't go after it. That's what we call anecdotal evidence. It's like, I can think of someone who would use that, but it doesn't mean there's a ton of people that would. But, yeah, I'm not against it. I'm not against having the option. If Apple decided to go down that route, I'd be like, okay, yeah, then there's someone for that demographic now. They got new Apple Watch. I mean, honestly, Apple Watch is so stagnated to the point of like, it's so good. It's not that it's bad. It's just they can't really think of good reasons. Like, if someone didn't offer me a good deal on my Series 4, I would have kept it and returned the Series 6. The only reason I still have this was someone offered me a pretty high price for my 4, and I was like, okay, well, if I'm making money by getting rid of my 4 and keeping the 6, then yeah, I'll take the profit. But the Series 5, the SE, the Series 4, Series 6, they're all so dang similar, and the differences in performance and differences in features are so small that I don't think it's an issue. It's going to be very difficult for Apple to justify people upgrading their watches moving forward. So if that's one of the ideas they come up with, of just making a super rugged, durable one that's not very aesthetically pleasing, but it looks, but it works really well for people that are outdoorsy and stuff, then sure, I got nothing against that. No problem. I fully agree that hardware isn't the issue. I personally also own an iMac Pro. I never wanted to buy a game PC just to game, so I just use Boot Camp. It can play any game very well. I did some Boot Camp with my iMac Pro, but there were always little driver issues whenever I would try to do Windows on it, and games would run into a handful of issues. It was rarely a graphical problem. It was always just a driver corruption or some bug through Boot Camp that obviously not that many other people were having. So, yeah. I don't think it's a hardware issue. I don't think there's anything Apple can really do to make any of their Macs into gaming machines. Like, that's all up to game devs, and the only way game devs would want to do it is if they felt like there was a huge gamer user base on the Mac. It's kind of a death loop. I don't know of a way to fix it, because people are not going to be buying Macs for gamers aren't going to buy Macs if there's no games on them, and game devs aren't going to make games for Mac if there's no gamers. So I don't know what has to budge, but neither issue can be solved by Apple. I mean, Apple might, the only possible solution I could think of is Apple like just drops billions of dollars on different popular game titles to make them like exclusive to the Mac, or they just start directly paying a bunch of game devs to optimize stuff for the Mac. They're just like, we'll give you money if you port your game to the Mac, which I don't see them doing. But I guess if Apple really, really wanted to try, they could. They did something crazy, and it has to be a major title. It can't just be some stupid Apple Arcade game, Oregon Trail, mini motorways on the Mac. It can't be some like, oh, that's fucking cool. It have to be something major, like Halo. What's the last one called? Is it Halo Infinite? I can't remember all the names. Like if the next Halo game, Apple works out a deal with Microsoft, and now they say, all right, the next Halo game will be supported on Mac. You might get some people interested, or it'll come to the Mac first or something like that. I don't know. I don't see Apple doing that. They probably are seeing enough success and profits with the Mac line already. They don't need to drop a bunch of money on game exclusives. Yeah, it's I don't see it happening. Diego Tron 91, thank you for the Twitch Prime. I appreciate that. I feel like there would be more people who would buy an Apple Watch that's meant to be durable than would buy a titanium or ceramic Apple Watch that costs thousands of dollars. Yeah, but there's more money to be made on those. That's why Apple's willing to cater to that. That's why Apple releases $1,000 iPhones every year, but not $400 iPhones every year, because the main reason Apple made a solid gold Apple Watch is not because they thought there would be a bunch of people buying the gold Apple Watch. It's because you can sell just a couple of them and have very, very good profit margins on them. Plus, with watches and wearables in general, you do want to cater to more of a luxurious demographic. More than likely, people like your dad, or people that are using, high-intensive equipment or diving and going into more high-intensive work, are the type of people that just don't buy watches at all. Or they're not going to buy smartwatches. That's more of a niche demographic that's going to want to buy something more specialized, and I guess Apple could go after that. But they're not seeing any slowdown in sales with the Apple Watch. They have dominated the smartwatch market, and they seem to just be exponentially growing it. Tons and tons of, like my sister just last month got an Apple Watch, and that's anecdotal too. But I just mean that they're not seeing any signs of slowing down with the Apple Watch. So, a ceramic watch cannot do more than one for $300. No, but they still, they still make them. they have very thick profit margins on them. That's why they do it. Would they do streaming, you think? Game streaming? It seems like they have issues with it on iOS, at least. I don't know if that business model is very successful. Google Stadia has been trying to make it work for a while, but I would not be shocked at all if Google ends up discontinuing that service or dropping the service altogether due to lack of demand or it not being super profitable. Essentially, I think Apple would do game streaming if they found a way to do it successfully, and if they haven't, if they're not doing it, then they're probably they probably haven't found a way to do it successfully. That type of business model, I don't know a whole lot about, but I have to imagine it involves a lot of upfront loss to get the streaming rights to different games, and then you're going to need a bunch of overhead at first. You're going to lose a bunch of money and then hope you make it back, which is a service that Google is good at. Google's very good at burning through cash and not turning a profit for the sake of getting people on their service and getting people on their platform. So Google making a game streaming service makes total sense to me, but yeah. Let's see. Just wanted to know if you would ever do a Q&A with your wife or a family member, either live or pre-recorded. Yeah, we've done a couple. I don't recall doing a live one recently, but yeah, I've done podcasts with my dad. We used to do live streams on Talos of Talks with my wife, but they became very time consuming and we just didn't feel like we have enough time for ourselves. My wife right now, you guys, you don't see all the work she does behind the scenes. Like, she is basically, the long short of it is she's working for a company online from home, but the company she's working for is severely understaffed, and they're making her work like 6 days a week right now. And granted, they are paying her overtime pay, so she's making more money, but still, for like 3 or 4 weeks in a row now, she's been working 6 days a week, only getting 1 day off. And today, they even asked her to do more overtime on top of her regular hours. So she is just crushing it with the work time, and she's barely getting any time to just relax. And I'm trying to encourage her to, to find some time for yourself, make sure you have some time to relax. So I would love to do more live content with my wife or do more podcasts with her, but she's working so hard and so much right now. I wouldn't dare try to add stuff to her plate. If anything, I want her to take more time off and get some more time to relax, go back to having 2-day weekends and stuff. So yeah, I'm totally down to do family member Q&As and type things, but yeah, it was just time consuming. That's the main goal. Let's see. The problem for Apple is that the gaming market is just inherently against Apple's business model. The gaming market heavily favor low profit margins on hardware and upgradability with gaming PCs, both of which are the antithesis of Apple's high profit margin business model. Well said, Avnub. I agree in that respect that Apple's business model doesn't fit the gaming market very well. That's true. Every couple of weeks, there's still rumors of Apple introducing a super high-end Apple TV with a gaming remote, so it could easily still happen. I don't think it's a good idea, but Apple's been making a lot of weird decisions lately. It's been in the rumor. It's kind of turning into AirTags. Apple making their own game console with a gaming controller. I remember hearing about back in 2018 and 2019, and here we are, and it still hasn't happened. So I don't put much weight into those rumors. I don't think it's super likely. I think Apple's just hoping that the Apple TV finds a gaming market, but they're not trying very hard. If anything, they should have put something more power intensive. Like, if you're going to charge $200 for a TV streaming box, for one, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that Apple should have got on the streaming stick market a long time ago. Would have made much more sense for Apple to jump on that, like, the same way the HomePod didn't sell very well, but the HomePod Mini did. That's how I look at the Apple TV. I was like, okay, this Apple TV is too expensive. They need to make a cheaper one that's not so focused on gaming. And that's what I love about the remote, is that the new remote is cheaper and not built around gaming. It's more practical and built for just watching content. But the Apple TV itself is still $150, $200. So, yeah, and I'm not a big fan of Arcade either. I don't know how well it's doing. It's very hard to know how well Arcade is doing, but I personally am guessing it's not doing very well. Like, there's some good games on there. There's some fun games, but they're just not $5 a month worth it games. The fact that you can't detach them from the service. You've explained several times that you guys are quite well off. I don't get it. If I was doing financially fine, I just paid off a huge house mortgage like you guys did and have perfect credit scores, I would cut back dramatically on the work. Well, we have other financial goals outside of paying a our house off. We're investing a lot and saving a lot. We're trying to build up our passive income. So it's not like you don't need to work anymore as soon as you pay off a house. That's not you're going to have trips, and you want to take vacations, and you want to, you got taxes, and you've got all kinds of other things in your life you got to pay for. It's not like your expenses just disappear. But we have other goals, financial goals that we're aiming for. Mac Mini is just the powerful Apple TV now. Yeah, but it's running Mac OS. The problem... Yeah, I read that one. Can you believe they want to make an Apple car? I doubt it at this point. We've gotten so far into it. It's so late. Just for the fact that Apple has still not unveiled anything, and there's so many other EVs at this point. Like, yeah, I don't see it happening. I could see them partnering with somebody or buying someone out, but I don't see it. I highly doubt it, personally. I wonder how good Arcade is doing. I'm trying to imagine. I should run a few polls on that. Do you pay for Apple Arcade, or do you use Apple Arcade? There's some, like, the free trial is worth it. I'll give it that. 30 days of free games that don't have ads or any in-app purchases, that's sweet. That's worth it. But after the 30 days were up, I was like, yeah, no thanks. Apple TV shouldn't be higher than $99. Yeah, I'm not saying it has to be as cheap as the Roku or Fire TV sticks, but still, yeah, just something slightly lower. I would even applaud them if they got it down to $130. I would be like, okay, step in the right direction at least. At least it's getting a little bit cheaper. I wonder how much of Drew's portfolio is just Apple stock. 0, believe it or not. Apple Sheep owns 0 Apple stock. I don't own any Doge either. Someone was asking about Doge earlier in the stream. I do have Doge on my watch list. I keep an eye on Doge because it's fascinating. But no, I don't have any. Man, it's so volatile though. Watching it day by day. Like one day it'll shoot up like crazy, and then the next day it shoots down. It's so all over the place. I have a few friends with Doge though. I keep in touch. But yeah, finance management's a good thing. Apple Arcade is great if you pay for Apple One. Yeah, well, I guess you got to be a bit more ingrained into the Apple services thing. I'm seriously considering buying the new remote. I'm just happy they changed the build quality and finally added a mute button, especially that Siri can't mute your audio for some reason. Yeah, me too. Weren't some games removed from service from disappointing adoption? I think I did see that. Apple's trying to redo their approach with arcade because they weren't getting enough success with it. I think that they need to make arcade games like detachable from the service. That's probably not the business model they're going for, but there were several games on arcade I'd be very interested in taking off and paying $5 once, but $5 a month for life and I can't take it off the service? No, it's not worth it. That's $60 a year. I think there's an annual option, but still $50 a year for those like cool mobile games. It's like they're nice, but $50 a year, I can't justify it. Avnub says the games don't feel rewarding enough even compared to other mobile games, so I stopped it. I don't really recommend it in my opinion. Yeah, it's kind of not a great thing to get addicted to, because if you do find a game you really like in arcade and you enjoy it, you're kind of stuck paying for it for life. Like, yeah, I hate the arcade tab in the App Store too. That sucks. Like, if you're not paying for the service, don't like dedicate a whole tab to it. What's the big deal? There's like always like, I just got a pop-up. I opened up the App Store just now and it's like, sign up for arcade after they know I've tried the trial and canceled it. And they're still advertising, try it free for 1 month. And it's its whole tab. Here's all these great games. It's like, the games themselves aren't bad. I think it's just the pricing and the fact that you can't detach it. Like, that Mini Motorways game or that, racing game or that Star Trek Legends Simon's Cat game, you're going to end up dropping like $500 on all these games over the course of 10 years or so. It's too much. They added Fruit Ninja. Well, I don't want to pay for Fruit Ninja. I just want to play Fruit Ninja. I guess if you're on Apple One and they just throw it in, it's fine. But to me, that's how they lock you into it. Because Apple One doesn't have an annual option. It's month to month. Whereas if you were to do more of those services like Apple Music and TV Plus annually, you would probably save money that way. Would you consider coming back to tvOS if Apple makes it cheaper and makes like a Fire Stick, or are you satisfied with your smart TV? No, Starlink. Ah, dang it. Come back, Starlink. Come back. I'm tempted to come back to tvOS. I want to give my Apple TV that I ordered a fair shot just because I've heard that there's been some updates to the YouTube app, and I really like the new remote. And it's a lot of money. It's probably going to get returned just because of how expensive it was. But I'm tempted to come back to tvOS just because, yeah, the Roku UI is fine. It is a little clunky, and I was using the Apple TV at my cousin's house the other night, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of nice. It's kind of clean looking, and I do enjoy that aspect of it. But, yeah, I'd be absolutely way more interested if they made a streaming stick, because then I wouldn't have to find a place for the Apple TV to sit or get one of those mounts that I hook on the back. It's just for streaming stuff, it shouldn't be this complicated. Let's see. Destiny 3 maybe play on Apple TV. Yeah, if they did some kind of exclusive like that, it would help a lot, but that's not what they're doing. Xbox is trying hard for that subscription model as well. Maybe that's where the gaming industry is going. Well, subscription model is where the entire industry of tech is going anyway. There's just undeniable proof that no matter what the business, what the company is, if you can get someone on a monthly payment model, you can typically get more money out of them than the one-time payment. So whether it's cars, games, movies, hardware, watches, whatever the subject is, you can get more money out of someone if you just tell them it only costs this much a month. It's basically the mindset of get the lowest possible price point in front of the customer as possible. So don't tell someone that the Pro Display is $5,000. Tell them that it's, $400 for a year, $400 a month for a year, or something, some specific number like that. You just tell them that it's a smaller price so that they go, oh, okay, $400 a month, I can swing that. It's not that bad. So that's why everything's pushing it. But the difference with the Xbox model, Xbox has Game Pass and lets you play a bunch of games for a subscription, but you can buy those games separately. You can still get those games without Game Pass, which is different. Do you subscribe to an internet TV service like YouTube TV? No, I'm not interested in the news or sports or any of that stuff. Everything I've ever cared about watching has been on YouTube for the most part. I mean, there's some shows I like on Netflix, and I actually have just... a friend of mine loaned me his Discovery Plus password. So I'm not paying for Discovery Plus, but there's a lot of reality shows that me and my wife watch on there. We're big, it's a guilty pleasure. It's not a good show, but it's funny and bad. But me and my wife watch a lot of 90 Day Fiancé, and that's on Discovery Plus. And there's a ton of shows on Discovery Plus, which we like, and I would not pay for it. We weren't paying for it before. It was just the fact that my cousin was like, hey, I have an extra account, I'm not using this service that much, so you can sign in with it. So he gave me his password. So we'll use it as long as he allows us. If he asks us to step off it, Discovery Plus, YouTube, and we also use a lot of Peacock. Peacock's a stupid name, but they have a ton of TV shows and a ton of movies on there that my wife and I really enjoy. And that Peacock is free. There's ads, but you just mute it and check your phone when there's ads. Gives me a chance to get up and go to the bathroom and get snacks and whatever. We have not used TV Plus very much. Very little use out of Apple TV Plus. None of the shows have really caught my attention very much. I've tried many of them, and I can't get into them. All the best parts of For All Mankind I can get on YouTube, and I did not like The Morning Show at all, and nothing else has really grabbed my eye. Just all the different shows they're making are not my thing. All these different dramas. I don't really watch that kind of thing very much. Yeah, that's the end goal, Avnub, is they're going to get everything down to an hourly rate. Like when Tim Cook talked about iPhones getting more expensive, he said that, when you think about the iPhone upgrade program and trading in your iPhone, it really only costs you like $1 or $2 a day. So that's a classic business technique that a lot of salesmen use. It's only the price of a cup of coffee a day. That's how much having the latest iPhone costs. It's just a cup of coffee every day. $2 a day, $60 a month. There you go. Get the latest iPhone. Not that big deal. Not that big a deal. So that's the end goal. $1 an hour for use of an Apple service. You can use Apple One and all of its perks for $1 an hour. It doesn't sound like very much, but then it stacks up over time. Before you know it, you're watching Ted Lasso and you dropped all your money, but I have not spent a penny on Apple TV Plus, but I still have it. Thinking about just canceling the trial just because I'm not using it very much. I showed my wife the trailer for Ted Lasso. I was like, a lot of people seem to like this show. And she was like, it doesn't look like my type of show. We're different, okay? We're different type of people. I watched a lot of the clips from Ted Lasso and nothing jumped out at me. I'm happy if you like the show. If you guys enjoy it, like the morning show. If you enjoy your Apple TV Plus, I guess enjoy it. But I'm just saying, don't guilt people into roping themselves into a monthly subscription. If you can get by with life without having to pay for monthly subscriptions, then I'd say you are an advantage at people who are roped into shows that are stuck on monthly subscriptions, because those services are going to get more and more expensive, and Apple's going to keep raising the price $1 a year. Netflix, Peacock, whoever it is, they're all going to increase their rates a little bit each year, and you're going to be so roped into those shows and so invested in those shows that you're not going to want to unsubscribe, and they're just going to basically have complete control over your wallet. So try actively to fight against those subscriptions if you can. I'm not going to watch Ted Lasso, because if I get really into it and I end up liking it, then I'm going to have to drop $5 a month or $50 a year to keep watching it. So I would rather avoid that. It's like, even if it is good, which based on what I've seen, it doesn't look terribly good on my personal taste. We watch different shows, guys. It's fine. It's like me. It's like you saying you should like the color blue more. It's like, what if I don't want blue? I don't have Amazon Prime. It's like, you should get into this because it's expensive, you know. I watch more YouTube than anything. Anyways, wow, it's past 4:00. Well, I appreciate the Twitch Primes and the bits, ladies and gentlemen, and the Tier 1 subs. I'm going to get going now. I appreciate you all for tuning in, and I hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care, all. Bye-bye.